Hello, everyone. Now that Bitcoin's heading towards all-time high, we're going to look at several predictions from several people. Note, these are not all my predictions, obviously, but I will have my own commentary on them. They're all over the place. There's some bearish, some bullish. We're not going to really bother about crypto savvies or capos or anyone else's. We're going to look at various analysts, because obviously like those like super bearish ones with all the Fibonacci retracement levels, they've all been kind of proven wrong because they all thought we weren't going to hit 60K based on all their retracement levels. But either way, the first one we're going to look at is Mike Novogratz. If you don't know who Novogratz is, he is the CEO of Galaxy Digital, and he actually thinks Bitcoin is going to weaken to about the mid-50s before rallying to break a record. And I think this maybe has a 40-50% chance of happening. We're not that far off from the mid-50s, but I think there's a big obstacle in getting there, and I'll explain that in a while. Now, this would only be like maybe a 10-12% retrace, so definitely not out of the question. But I think we might only get to the upper 50s if we dip below 60 at all. And that's because there's just a lot of buying pressure from Bitcoin. Now, the government, like I said, just moved $922 million worth of Bitcoin, but the government never really sells on the open market, so it's kind of not the same thing. The US government, or Uncle Sam, basically always sells on auction, or they might be selling directly to BlackRock or Fidelity. However, that might take some of the buying pressure off that BlackRock or Fidelity has. And plus, it's not only $900 million that the U.S. government has. They have $7.2 billion worth, well, $7.6 billion worth of Bitcoin, but they're only selling off once every couple of months, a small chunk. This is from the Bitwise thing. I think they do have more from the Silk Road thing, but even though this is always a threat, I just don't really see it happening because they don't sell off all at once and they don't really sell off on the retail market. And that right now is, as long as I'm aware, is basically the only thing that could actually get us to dump so much. However, there are people actually taking profits. If you're looking at charts and graphs, I don't think any of that stuff really matters. I don't think any of the resistances are going to matter too much. Same thing with the supports if we even want to bounce to them. And I don't think any of the Fibonacci retracement levels really matter either, because as we've seen in the last week, they just completely melt in the face of so much buying. Of course, like Novogratz, I wouldn't really be all that surprised if we do see some corrections. And like I said, his levels aren't like 30K or something. Mid-50s is reasonable, but that's still a big $6,000 dump, and you would actually need a big sale at once to actually do that. Now, once again, on the Genesis thing, I don't know if they actually sold or not, because like they don't really tell me. I just assume they kind of did last week, but I'm not really sure if they actually did or not. And like Novogratz actually thinks like the current price rally is a price discovery. I don't think so. I think there's still a resistance at around 69 where the all-time high is. But after that, we will actually be in price discovery. And this is very different from the last bull run because the last bull run didn't have big institutions actually come in. So this bull run might actually be more. Novogratz thinks the market is like too leveraged right now, but I think most of this run has actually been incentivized. Or like most of this run has actually been done by like not so much leverage, but by like Bitcoin ETF buys. So I'm not really sure how true that actually is. He thinks there's going to be a washout because it's too leveraged, but they like shorts might get liquidated the other way. And a lot of longs did get liquidated when we went from like 64 to like 60. So we'll see how this actually holds out. I think this has a 40-50% chance of happening, but the challenge here is that like, how are you going to offset the ETF buying? Some people are way more bullish. They're thinking 150,000 by 2025. Now, I think this has probably like more than a 50% chance of happening because that's kind of my prediction as well. I think we're going to top around 150,000. And they're saying unprecedented Wall Street earthquake. Now, if there's an unprecedented Wall Street earthquake, I think it's going to be more than 150,000. But just based on what I've seen right now, 150K is probably a good bet. Because once again, $150 billion in 3 years. So it might get to 150,000, then shrink back to like maybe like 70, 80,000, and then go up even higher, within a couple of years, going to the next halving. It might sort of break the 4-year cycle if there's like a Wall Street tsunami. And like the thing is, people are saying that this particular wave that we're seeing right now is not the biggest Bitcoin ETF wave. In a couple of months, the Bitcoin, like when big institutions actually get all their ducks in a row, when banks can actually do custody and all that stuff, I think that's when a lot of people think they're really, really going to come in. Like the volume now is impressive, but once they get all those ducks in a row, once they can actually once these companies will actually start offering these projects without being demanded from the high wealth investors, a lot of people think that's going to be the real wave. But this wave is already big enough. Obviously, like some of these services are definitely going to be delayed. So like a lot of analysts are thinking 150,000. I'm thinking about 150,000 too, but I think they're also like, we're also not taking into account how the Middle East might come in. And like maybe there's going to be a more surge demand by buyers than we think, because like the actual demand numbers are like way higher than what I actually thought originally. Like the Bitcoin ETF is like the first, like the third or fourth most popular ETF ever launched in the history of ETFs. And Fidelity's not behind by that much either. They're like fourth or fifth. So like the popularity of these things is way more than I expected. And like Bitcoin, like cryptos that launch at that get more than 150 over the course of a couple of years. So we might actually be underestimating by quite a lot the potential of how much these Bitcoin ETFs can actually go up to. Now, the other thing is like this Bitcoin ETF money is not going to magically transfer into altcoins. The people buying the Bitcoin ETFs are probably not going to be buying altcoins with the same money. But I think as Bitcoin goes higher, the regular people that are in crypto will get more confident in the market, especially as they see that like the Bitcoin buys are just getting more and more. And as they actually see that, I think they'll just get a lot more confident in the market. Not just a little bit more confident, but a lot more confident in the market. And they'll actually go in buying altcoins looking for a higher multiplier, because the original people that are in crypto are looking for a much higher ROI than what Bitcoin can give. So I think they're going to release and go into altcoins, as soon as Bitcoin hits some benchmarks. And they're going to go more into altcoins than before. So altcoins will probably lag by quite a while this time, because the ETF people aren't the same people as the altcoin people. And some people predict over 200K by 2025. Now, I think there's way more bullish predictions than bearish predictions right now, just because people are seeing the amount of money that's actually going to come in. And this prediction is from the founder of 10T Fund. I still think this has a good 40% chance of happening. Remember, like some of these overlap. Just because it can go over 150K doesn't mean it can't go over 200K. Those are not two mutually exclusive. And like this guy is saying potentially between 90 and 200K in a year. That's a really, really big range. And I do think 200K is definitely possible with certain countries coming in. I mean, you're looking at Taiwan and a bunch of other countries that actually are looking at making it legal tender. You're also looking at, the rule change next year, which may actually let certain retirement funds and stuff get into Bitcoin. So I think like there's actually more of a splash than before right now. And I think there's a lot of good predictions in this area. And I think some people are taking the effect that other like rich countries like Saudi Arabia, Qatar, they might actually want to come in as well. And of course, the uptrend could be way, way more high than we actually thought. And I think some of them are looking at like what gold actually did after the ETF. Now, gold took a while, but the markets work a lot faster now than they did back then with gold. Remember, like we have 24/7 markets. Information just travels at the speed of light around at this time around. And I think people FOMO in a lot faster, and people are more educated and more knowledgeable about these things than when that stuff actually came out. Like I think George Soros, when like currency trading first came on, people weren't used to a 24-hour trading cycle, so he used that and to short the British pound. You can't really do that anymore because people are actually familiar with that. So like with this kind of like fast information, with crypto being a 24/7 market, more or less, not for ETFs, but like just for regular crypto, I think this can happen much, much faster, and like we can go much higher, way faster than gold. And there is even a lot of evidence that some gold investors are coming into Bitcoin, further boosting the market. Some people are saying there could be a drop to 42K after the April halving. There's one way this could actually happen. I don't think it's going to, but there's one way this could actually happen. And that's because of the miners. Several miners could actually exit and then sell their stash, and that could drop it to 42. But if you were to sell your stash, unless you really had bills to pay right then, I think you would like stagger your sell and not actually just sell all at once, because that would make you actually way more money. There's some analysts at JP Morgan thinking that it'll push prices down to $42,000 because of a sudden sell down. And after the halving, miners costs are going to increase, and that will force some out of the market. And that could cost a temporary decline as they sell out their Bitcoin reserves. Because remember, like Bitcoin reserves fluctuate maybe by 10, 20%, but there's that other 80% that like people just always keep. But if they want to sell out of the market altogether, they could actually sell out of the market. So maybe like 15% chance of this actually happening. I don't think it's going to drop that low. Because that's really dangerously close to what it would actually cost just in terms of electricity to mine a Bitcoin afterwards. So I think it'll actually float more above that. So those are my predictions. Those are like my thoughts on these predictions. Let me know what you think. Like, subscribe, hit that bell notifications button. Thank you and have a nice day.